On this episode, we discuss Wink changing to a subscription model. NASA's still gonna pay Russia. There may be a shakeup with the Pixel team. Also, we have rumors about the next Pixel models. Plus, we discuss how the HBO Now app has been removed from some Apple TVs, and Facebook makes a weird purchase. This and more in this week's show.
I'm Chris from Play Comics, a show where we look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material, a part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other astonishingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
This is the official GonnaGeek.com show. Each week, we run down the latest news and happenings in the world of geek. These are your hosts for the show, Steven, Chris, and SP.
Welcome to an all-new episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I am Steven John Drew, and I am pleased to say SP's here this week.
I guess your resident Apple fanboy. Hey, how's everybody going? Looking forward to a good show tonight.
And unfortunately, Chris couldn't be here this week. Something about he has reached his limitation of amount of episodes he's allowed to do with me for this month. Well, maybe not really, but we'll see how that plays out next week. But Suncast is here. Hey, Suncast.
Hey, SP and Steven. So glad I can be here in 2016. 2020 was just so crappy that I figured, why not? It's 2016 again. Plus, I got my vintage 2015 Gonna Geek shirt here.
Oh man, I can't believe it's been that long since I missed out on that awesome fest. It's been a long time, but you know what? That's incredible. For the audio listener, Suncast is wearing a Gonna Geek shirt that he wore to C2E2 back in 2015 when there was a huge Gonna Geek event, and he is wearing the 2016 glasses, which, by the way, can I just go on record right now and say that those year glasses should have ended at 2009. The one does not look right by any means. No, they should have stopped in the aughts.
No, but I mean, 2020 is just such a crappy year. It's just, let's be done with it.
Well, whether you've got your glasses or not, Suncast, we appreciate you being on here today and living the past of 26. Okay, your glasses are gone now. That's awkward.
I'm still in 2016 though.
Can I join you in 2016?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Was 2017 the year where we had all those people pass away at the end of the year? Was that 20? I think that was 2017, wasn't it?
I don't know. You're the one that's supposed to keep track of the famous deaths. That was your responsibility.
No, that was not mine. I don't know whose it was. I just remember there was one. What I was trying to make sure is that 2016 was not that year, because if Suncast is going back to 2016, then he'd have to relive all that.
But see, he knows about it, so he could make some bets or something on it.
Maybe go and get one last autograph, I guess.
Yeah. There you go. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the news. Oh, I am so glad I waited a week for this news story. This was one that I thought about doing last week, but then decided against it because, figured there might be some developments. I had an inner hunch, and the hunch played out. I definitely didn't forget to talk about it last week, but there's the hunch happened, and it's all to do with Wink. If you're not familiar with Wink, Wink was They were a trendsetter for smart automation. They broke a lot of ground with smart automation. Essentially, they were one of the first to create a hub that you could then, a mainstream hub that you could then connect a bunch of different devices to in the world of smart home, like Zigbee and Z-Wave. But they also threw in a Lutron hub as well in there. It was quite a popular product. It was actually where Chris Farrell and myself both started our smart home endeavors, and I bought a lot of stuff to go with that, and luckily it worked out that eventually I could transition because Wink in recent years has had some problems with their service. If you weren't familiar with this, we've talked about this actually on the past in the show. While they were once a very, very quality product, they quickly took a nosedive in service with many, many outages to the point that I just was like, I got to get off of here. I'm switching. And I just did a 180 and switched very, very quickly, even though they had some better features than where I had switched to at the time. Well, after, I don't know, a year or two of terrible service, they said to themselves, you know what we should do? We should charge a monthly fee for this terrible service. And that's what they announced. Yes, Wink did announce on May 6th that they would be switching to a subscription model at $4.99 US per month. This was done originally through a blog post over on, I think it's blog.wink.com. Quote, Wink has taken many steps in an effort to keep your hub's blue light on. However, long-term costs and recent economic events have caused additional strains on our business. Unlike companies that sell user data to offset costs associated with offering free services, we do not. Data privacy is one of Wink's core values, and we believe that user data should never be sold for marketing or any other purpose. End quote. And there was a whole other post, and that's where they announced the $4.99 fee. So you're saying, okay, they've announced this on May 6th. When are they going to roll that out? Maybe July, August? SP, would you be shocked to hear that they announced it on May 6th to be effective May 13th?
No, because I think they're really hurting for money, and that's why they're doing this, to try to obtain some sustainability. I think they've been blocked out of the hardware selling market for a variety of reasons. First of all, their competitors won't sell them online. Second of all, I think they have some manufacturing issues where they're not able to get their items manufactured in the quantities that they really need it to mass market it. So no, I'm not surprised. They need money. They need money bad. And in order to save what's left of Wink, especially since we ran into all those non-payment of employees issues, when was that? It wasn't a year ago. It was like 9 months ago, right?
Yeah, I think it was last summer.
Okay, so a year ago. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all. They must have grabbed some venture capitalist funding and it's running out, so they need to make money somehow. Could this be a way forward for all of these smart home services? And I will say no, it's not, because there's going to be competition out there from other people that either have bulk services to go around it or hardware that they can sell around it. So things like the Google Home or the Amazon A Word or the Samsung Smart Things, you can all buy hardware or have other services through it. So no, they don't need to charge.
So that wasn't the end of the saga, because on May 12th, a day before that deadline, they said, quote, we've received a lot of feedback regarding the announcement of our subscription service. We're grateful for those that have shown support. We can appreciate that some customers may need additional time, so we've extended the deadline to subscribe by an additional week until May 20th. End quote.
7 whole days.
So, by the way, if you haven't ever checked out the Wink, I think it's Wink Hub subreddit, if you ever trash Wink over the past couple of years of garbage service, you were quickly jumped on by a bunch of people who were just like, no, Wink is great. I don't know what you're talking about. I got flamed on Twitter by these sort of people too and other things. But the Wink subreddit for a while has been full of people who have been Wink apologists. And I have to say, as soon as this announcement came, I didn't see any of them. In fact, the moderators had a very, very strict position over the last year or so on there, being like, no, you will not talk about moving off of Wink unless you talk in the following threads. Once this was announced, there were many, many threads that were never pruned or anything. All those rules went out the window. This is the degree of change of opinion that I saw over there. I think it's a good gauge of that. So I'm sure that they did see support from the 3 employees that really want to keep getting a paycheck. I'm pretty sure that that's probably who they're referring to there. But anyways, May 20th, we're recording this on May 18th, couple more days. And by the way, if you have really old firmware on there, at the end of May, your device will be bricked too. So just keep that in mind. That was an announcement back in March. So keep that in mind. But it didn't end there either, Suncast. There was more. There was more.
Oh, God.
On May 13th, they put out a blog post advising that Chamberlain was discontinuing the Wink integration. Quote, effective June 1st, 2020, Chamberlain will be terminating its partnership with Wink. Newly proposed terms from Chamberlain would have required Wink to generate tens of thousands of new MyQ users each year, as well as pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual licensing fees. Wink would have liked to continue its partnership with Chamberlain, but we are unable to meet these demands. Chamberlain was unwilling to agree to agree to more reasonable terms, and they will continue with the termination of all existing Wink and MyQ integrations, end quote. And then it goes on. This is effective June 1st.
This really does not sound good for Wink.
No, sounds terrible. Again, if that's the case, obviously the ball is more in Chamberlain's court over there. If you're not familiar, Chamberlain garage door openers. I suspect there was some other back and forth of Wink trying to tighten their pocketbook. I don't know what you want to say, tighten their financial leak, whatever you want to say. And I suspect that's what happened. The timing just seems too coincidental. I still feel like this is a big cash grab, trying to get something before they go under, or so that they can eventually just go, we tried, didn't work. We're closing this part of will.i.am's company.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I basically laid out my argument before, and I think that this is going to be the end of Wink, unless there's so many people out there that want to support Wink, or there's enough people that do the $4.99 subscription fee that they're able to keep some portion of the company going. So we'll see how much longer they want to hemorrhage money and how much money they want to hemorrhage. $4.99 from a crowdfunding sense, because that's what I'll call this, crowdfunding sense. There's a lot of YouTube memberships out there that are at that level, the $4.99 level. And that enables, if you have big enough fan base, that enables a creator to stay in business and to work from home. But I don't know if it's big enough for a company, if it's considered a crowdfunding level, to sustain itself.
I'm honestly surprised they have not done this sooner. For as many problems as they had, and they were still just trying to skate by and just do the same old. And I think they're just in real trouble here. It's gotten to the point where they are, not only have they been unreliable, they've tarnished their reputation. They don't have a stable platform at this point. It's all going downhill for Wink, and I would not be somebody that's getting into the smart home market and getting into Wink. There's other brands out there that I would trust more, such as SmartThings, to invest my money into at this point if I were going to start with more smart home technology than Wink. SB, did you ever sell that other Wink hub that you have?
It actually just today, I put it in the photo booth. I haven't taken the pictures in, but it is in the photo booth, ready to take pictures to sell. I do intend on selling. There's no reason for me to keep my unused Wink 2 device. There just is not. And yeah, I do want to sell. I don't know if I'll be able to sell it, but it's not staying in my house. There's no reason at all for it. So you have like I said, the main smart speakers. You had the Google and the Amazon. You also have the Samsung Hub. You had the Philips Hub. So there's a few options out there.
Habitat.
Yeah, Habitat. The one thing that I think people are not really globbing onto, and I only say this because I was forced to go this route when I had my HVAC system redone about 2 years ago, is the thermostats can be hubs. And yes, I know that there's some Nest integration and stuff like that out there right now, but I think we're going to see smart home devices more integrated into homes in the thermostat, because it's a central place to have that sort of thing. Well, what happened? I don't know, but I think if I was an up and coming company, that's exactly where I'd want to be.
So in the chat, Kent said, what does Wink do that needs connection to their servers? Follow-up question, can they sell a program that just makes a PC into a local Wink server so they have less wear on their servers? So these hubs that we're talking about, SmartThings, Wink, Philips Hue, the thermostat idea that SP is talking about, they are all talking to a certain radio technology is the way it goes. That's the purpose of the hub, because the hub talks to, the key ones are Zigbee and Z-Wave. They're essentially a wireless technology. And so you need a hub to talk to those. Philips Hue runs on Zigbee technology, but they have their own, we'll call it encryption. It's not encryption, but they're basically the same concept where it's their own sort of language talking over the Zigbee connection. So these hubs talk to those. The other smart way that people go is hubless, where they just use Wi-Fi devices, and those Wi-Fi devices talk directly out to a server in who knows where. Could be US, could be China, could be Russia, who knows where they are. And so there's really the two different paths. The hub itself is essentially connected to the cloud that then talks to the app, or in some cases shares to other services. For example, you may have a service that does not talk directly to that hub, but will talk to their service. So like, let's say it is a thermostat. You might have a thermostat that talks out to their server, which then talks down to your hub. And so that can all be controlled by the one app. That's one way that it could be done. As for whether they would do a PC program, I highly doubt it, especially getting into a subscription model. But the other thing I want to touch on as well is there is a bit of a desire for some people to get out of the cloud. And there are some other utilities that are available for that. I use what's called Hubitat now. Brief time I was using SmartThings. I think SmartThings is great. I am happy to recommend it to anybody who doesn't want to get too technical. If you want to get a little more technical, Hubitat is great because it is all kept locally unless you want that app, which then can still be local if you're on the network, but also has the cloud integration if you're removed. But otherwise, everything is all local. So if their server went down tomorrow, I'd still be fine. I'd still have access to all that. But then getting super technical, there is a open source piece of software, which is just that. It is a program running on a computer that is called Home Assistant. Home Assistant is one that we've got a couple people on the network that use it. And so if you, the Diet.io podcast folks, they use it as well. My brother uses it. It's just a little bit too technical for my liking. Hubitat's the nice merge for me until I feel like going to Home Assistant. But there are some options that do go that way. The problem is if you're running software and you want to talk to that Zigbee or Z-Wave, those wireless technologies, now you got to add a radio receiver to that computer. So like, let's say you're running Home Assistant on a Linux box. That computer doesn't have the ability to talk on those radio waves, the Z-Wave and Zigbee. So you'd have to get a dongle to plug into that. So the hub, essentially, the big key part of that is the radio waves inside of the hub. That's the key part of it. So there's your big, long explanation about how it all works. Just bottom line, if you're in Wink now, I would suggest getting out. And don't get into Wink now. Just bad idea.
Steven, are those 5G waves that cause coronavirus?
I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that at all.
That is not true. I'm going to touch that. That is not true. That is just a joke.
All right. So what's good in your news? Let's move on fast from that. What's in your news, SP?
Well, I saw a news article in the past week that kind of shocked me, given current events, the fact that the U.S. is actually going to start launching its own astronauts later on this month. And it was an article on space.com titled, NASA to pay Russia $90 million for a Soyuz seat on a crew launch this fall. The article was by Megan Bartles, which you can follow her on Twitter.
Did you say Meghan Markle? Is that what you said?
Bartles. Megan Bartles.
Oh.
I know you are a Meghan Markle fan, as all the royals. You are the biggest fan.
I bow to them.
Chris hates them, but you love them. Okay. NASA has struck a deal with Roscosmos. They are the same agency. Roscosmos is the Russian space agency. NASA is the U.S. space agency. NASA has struck a deal with Roscosmos to buy a seat on a Soyuz crew launch this fall, bumping a cosmonaut from that flight in return for $90 million and a bit of cargo on a U.S.-built spacecraft. The agreement, which NASA announced on May 12, 2020, comes just as the space agency prepares to launch 2 astronauts on a U.S.-made rocket for the first time since 2011, when the space shuttles were retired. NASA spokesperson Stephanie Sharholtz told Space.com in an email, quote, NASA has high confidence that U.S. commercial crew providers will be available in 2020/2021 and that no further Soyuz seat purchases will be necessary. This modification to the Roscosmos contract is to ensure continued U.S. presence aboard the space station as we transition to a sustained commercial crew transportation operations, unquote. To compensate for that missed opportunity to Russian, in addition to the $90.2 million payment, NASA has also agreed to ship about 1,800 pounds, which is 800 kilograms, in the bulk of a Tesla smart truck, of Russian cargo to the orbiting laboratory on U.S. cargo ships over the course of the next 2.5 years.
All right, SP. How much did you say that they paid?
$90 million in the exact price, because we do have an exact price. $90,252,905.69.
That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, especially considering that they're only going to ship 2,198 US dollars, because you said they're shipping 1,800 pounds. I did the translation. 1,800 pounds to US dollars is 2,198. That's really, really odd.
Yeah, it's a bad conversion. Yeah, I don't think that, well, heck, right now the Russians are the only game in town as we record this on May 18th, 2020. Perhaps in, I don't know, 11 days, there might be another option out there. But for the next 2 weeks or so, the Russians have the only ball game in town. And yeah, you got to pay for it. That's pretty much how it's been. It's been about $80 million to $100 million per seat that NASA has paid Russia this whole time.
So they're not inflating for high demand.
No, I actually, in the very beginning, I think NASA wanted to maintain Roscosmos because they were in danger of folding. And so there might have been a little bit of inflation in the seat price, which is why I gave the range from $80 to $100 million. But no, this is just market price. It costs that much to construct the launch vehicle, to fuel it, and to do all the safety inspections to actually launch it and control it, that sort of thing. So that's how much it costs per seat. And there's 3 seats on a Soyuz.
I was I'm surprised because they clearly could have taken the webcam route. Webcams just 3-4 months ago were like, for a Logitech C920, like $40. Now you're paying $3,000. And so they could have done it. They could have just gone in line with the webcams and just up the price.
There's been so many fleecing of everything. I've heard DoorDash getting screwed over by buying pizzas for $16 that the restaurant was selling for $24. So the restaurant was just buy the pizzas for DoorDash and make $8 on a pizza.
Oh, man.
It's just funny stuff going on these days.
Listen, if NASA wants to buy a seat, I got a seat right here that I'll sell them for half price. Half the cost of $90 million. I'll take $40 million for this seat right here. It doesn't go to space, but all they want is a seat, right?
No, they want the seat in space in a safe, human, habitable environment.
I think I have a hot water heater that I can convert into a rocket.
Now remember, that's how Mad Mike died.
All right, well, let's move on to Google Pixel news. You're saying, wait, Steven, you're just going to go and you're just going to brush aside Suncast and go on to your second news point? No, Suncast brought Google Pixel news.
I did. And I guess partly because Chris isn't here to defend Pixel and you're the only one here, so it makes it a lot easier.
Okay, let's just pause here for a moment. Let's pause and remind you that 2 episodes ago, I called out Chris directly as I was defending Apple. Okay, this is a crazy universe we live in now.
So a new report claims that Google has only sold 2 million Pixel 4 handsets, leading to the departure of 2 key executives. Google shipped around 2 million units of the Pixel 4 in the first 2 quarters it was available at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, according to IDC's estimates. That's a drop from the 3.5 million Pixel 3 and nearly 3 million Pixel 3a models that shipped in the first 2 quarters of their availability, a new report in the information claims. In the US, Google's largest market had just over 3% market share of the smartphone market last year, according to IDC. So the sales woes have led to 2 key Pixel executives leaving the company. One of them is Mark Lavoie and general manager Mario Perez. I know I'm butchering that name, and I apologize for that. Mark Lavoie is the mastermind that was behind Google Pixel Camera, who last year showed off his team's photography advances during the Google event in New York, and he left the company back in March. So this is a very recent thing, and this smells like a lot of trouble for Google at this point. If they're having this much trouble with Pixel that key executives are leaving, where does this leave Google going forward with the Pixel? Is this something where it's in so much trouble now that there's no saving the Pixel line, that it's had too many bad things to, like, it's right now, it's only saving grace, I guess, is the Pixel 3a, which, I guess. I'm not really an Android guy, so I don't really care, but whatever. It's the fact that the Pixel has been struggling for a while now, and with 2 key executives leaving, that doesn't sound very good for Pixel.
Before Steven steps in, I'm just going to speak up and say I don't think it's just a Pixel problem. I don't think it is just an Android problem. This is also an iPhone problem. If you take a look at iPhone sales in the 4th quarter of 2019, they were down. And I think the fact that these flagship phones have cost $1,500 at the high end is a financial impossibility for a lot of people. So as these phones get better and better, the lower end phones or even the higher end phones, people are keeping them for longer and longer, 3, 4, 5 years. And they just don't need to buy a new phone because it just costs too much. So I think it's an industry-wide problem. We talked about the issue where the leaked iPhone 12 is going to go down a little bit in price. I don't think it's down enough, but they're trying on the Apple side. I think Google is going to have to do some industry statistics in order not to shut this down, because I do think the Pixel is a really good phone for the price.
So I had a Pixel 1, have a Pixel 2 now, and I was a big fan of the Pixel 1. I thought the Pixel 1 was priced right for where it was, and the big criticism that they had at the time was it was missing a couple of specs to do with the camera at the time. It didn't have optical stabilization, I think, but they came out and they're like, take your optical stabilization and shove it where the sun don't shine, because we will give you a better product using our software. And they delivered on that. And they, at the time, the hardware that was being seen elsewhere did not compare to the software helped camera that they had. They did a really good job. The problem was, as the following years happened, they continued to raise the price along with everybody else, and they fell further and further behind what the commonalities were of phones that were in there without being able to make it up. They had a couple of features before everybody else, but there were some things that it was like, this phone has multiple cameras on it where you can get an ultra wide shot should you want it. One of the Pixels didn't have that at the time compared to the other flagship phones. You can't make that up. It doesn't matter what software you have. You're not getting that wide angle shot. You know, there's some other things like wireless charging they were late on. And there was just some other things that just came out that they increased the price, but they didn't deliver on what it was. For me, The Pixel line has continued to be, though, the phone that I've looked at as an Android user, because there's two things that I want. Number one is a pretty stable experience using the Android, the true Android method, not something that has been changed by a third-party manufacturer to the point that it's almost unrecognizable or it's a different experience. And then number two, this is the bigger one. I want security updates. And it was only within the last couple of years that Samsung, the leader, arguably, of Android devices, got on board with that. For a long time, they were months and months and months behind security updates. And that was a big problem for me. So I've continued to sort of look at Pixels, but I have always questioned, like, the reason I still have a couple-year-old Pixels, because I haven't seen the value there in upgrading for what they were offering at the time versus what I had now. The only one that appealed to me was the 3A, and then by the time I kind of was like, yeah, I can get by, I can wait, then the rumors of the 4A were out, so I've just been holding on until then. So I agree that a shakeup was needed, because they went, and if you remember, the beginning of the Pixel line was the dumping of the Nexus line, and the Nexus line was Google's own product they were offering that was stock Android with their updates, with their experience, but it was cheaper because their hardware was always quite a bit behind. And then they tried to modernize their hardware and give a better product, but again, they fell behind. So I think that they absolutely needed this shakeup because they have not been delivering based off the price point. So they have to decide, do they want to come out with all the bells and whistles, or do they want to target another demographic? And I think that's the big question that they have to ask themselves. And clearly the current executives were not doing it, because the Pixel 1, Pixel 2, relatively good reviews, overall favorable. The 3 and the 4, meh, lots of critiques on them. So I think that that's two iterations. The Pixel 3, there was a merging of two companies. I believe they had two cell phone divisions that they were trying to weed through. So you kind of were like, well, let's wait and see what happens with 4. But then the 4 was just like the 3 with some of the big question marks. So I think this makes sense. And I hope that they make the right decision, because I do not want to go Samsung. I don't want to go that way. I don't want to go for a company.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. And unfortunately, if I want a more true stock experience, I have to go with a company that is probably not carried in North America, because most of the ones that are carried in North America with the different carriers are ones that they have heavily reskinned Android. Like LG, last time I checked, was terrible Android experience. So I just think that it's good if they continue offering a product, but I don't think they've been meeting their mark there. So I'm a big Pixel fan, but I totally think this was needed.
Again, I think what they should be doing is basically building what are reference systems. In computer terms, a reference system or reference card or hardware, reference hardware, especially just a base stock model of whatever. This is a very common term for graphics card, where you just have whatever the reference system is that NVIDIA comes out with. And then you have other manufacturers such as EVGA and all these other companies like Sapphire. They come out and they make their own modifications to the reference system that they think it best fits their customers' needs. I think that's something that Google should probably do with the Pixel line. It's just stick to making like an Android reference system.
And that's what the Nexus was. It was not there to be the greatest hardware, the best device. It was there to be a reference. That's exactly what Nexus was.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on from this into some more Pixel news, because the second news point that I brought actually kind of ties in a little bit to maybe some of these theories about where they might be going, because last week, the rumor came out that the Pixel 4a might be sold at $349. This was based off of a survey that allegedly came out from Google asking about that. And there were some other back channel rumors as well that they were going to try to come in and undercut the iPhone SE price. SP, what's the iPhone SE price?
I think the bottom model is $549, I want to say.
Okay. So they wanted to try to come... I thought it was cheaper than that. But anyways, the rumor is that the Pixel 4a might be at $349. And that was to really give an appealing price tag. That's the rumor. Well, yeah, I think it was today the news came out that there was another survey rumor asking about if the Pixel 5 was to be priced at $699. So the Pixel 5 being Google's next alleged flagship phone, possibly being priced at $699. This price tag, to me, would indicate that they are not building a phone to compete with the latest Samsung, the latest, greatest iPhones, but instead get a little bit more, I guess, above where the Nexus was, but below a flagship phone. That's what that price tag seems to indicate. Now, these are all rumors at this point. We don't know what's going to happen. But I thought that this was interesting because not only is their cheapo phone significantly cheaper, but their possible quote flagship phone being well below what some of the other flagship phones are looking to be priced at this year. I guess we'll see. It could all just be a bunch of crock, and who knows, it might not materialize, but it's interesting to think about. And I hope it's true because I don't necessarily think that the Pixel 4 needed to have all the features that everybody said that it was missing. I don't think it needed it. I think it just needed to be priced appropriately. Yeah. And this would be that, if that's the case, if the 5 is missing a bunch of flagship features. So I guess time will tell. In any case, any rumor of prices of phones going down is good at this point, let's be honest.
Right, and I have to correct myself. So $549 is the higher end of the iPhone SE with 256 gigabytes. There is a low end at 64 gigabytes, which is $399. And then the middle of the road to 128 gigabyte is $449. So that is the range of price for the iPhone SE in comparison to the Pixel 4.
So I just wanted to share that because I thought it coupled well with Suncast news. All right, SP, I know I'm a big Pixel fan. I talked about Pixel because I love Pixels so much. You're a huge HBO Now, Go, whatever app guy. You're a huge fan of that. So you go ahead and talk about that now.
I'm not a fan. I'm just entirely confused about the HBO infrastructure. I have no idea which app is what.
You and just about everybody else.
Exactly.
This is beyond HBO. This is HBBO. That was a Seinfeld sort of play there. There you go. I ripped off a Seinfeld joke.
Good enough. So last week we talked about the possibility of a new 6th generation Apple TV coming out, and I said it will be announced tomorrow. It hasn't been announced yet. However, I am saying today that it might be announced tomorrow. And why is that? Because the HBO Now app is now removed from 2nd and 3rd generation Apple TVs as HBO and support. This was via an article via 9to5mac.com written by Benjamin Mayo on May 17th. So let's go over the what, and then we'll talk a little bit about the why. As announced earlier, the HBO Now app has been removed from the home screens of older Apple TVs, 2nd and 3rd generation models, this weekend as HBO has ended support for the devices. The company will also be removing the HBO Go app soon. Originally, HBO said that it would stop supporting older Apple TVs at the end of April. Following some backlash, however, the company extended the deadline by 2 weeks to May 15th. Wow, I wonder if they know Wink. Anyway, that date has now passed and HBO Now is no longer available on the platform. HBO makes the argument that the 2nd and 3rd generation Apple TVs are outdated devices. The 3rd generation Apple TV was first released in 2012, more than 8 years ago. However, the reality is people do not upgrade their set-top boxes as frequently as other consumer products like computers or phones. So many of these older Apple TV boxes are still in use. The 3rd generation Apple TV was sold by Apple until 2015 for as low as $69, which meant it proved pretty popular. The new TV OS Apple TVs start at $149, which is a hefty price jump over the $69 Apple TV 3rd generation. There are also many rumors about an Apple TV hardware refresh coming later this year, aka tomorrow. So it isn't a great time to invest in a purchase. This will not be the last depreciation of the 3rd generation Apple TVs. Users have already seen that the UFC app, I'm sorry I butchered that, has been discontinued for that model, and there is no hope of newer services such as Disney Plus being supported either. So this is interesting, guys. We had a whole big conversation last week about the fact that both Steven and I actually still have third generation Apple TVs. And I, for one, was looking forward to the sixth generation model being released because I'm not going to buy a model right now because I know the sixth generation is right around the corner. So why do I want to pay as much as I would with the sixth generation now when I know something else is coming in the future? If I only had the Apple TV to use right now, then I would be hurting because there's a lot of apps on it and a lot of different things that you can't do with it right now because it is an older firmware, an older OS. Here's the thing that the author of this article put in, Benjamin Mayo. It was a commentary. It is a shame that the modern Apple TV line of hardware is so alienating. Apple offers a premium set-top box with hardware to play rich 3D games when most people just want a simple streaming stick that integrates with all their video apps, music subscriptions, and iCloud Photos library. It's an interesting opinion because you have the Fire TV stick, you have the Chrome TV sticks, you have a Roku TV sticks, and Apple doesn't offer anything. They just have a $150 to $200 set-top box that's available. I think that's pretty harsh, guys.
I'm kind of surprised they have not done a stick or some sort of lower-end version.
I think it would sell pretty well.
I mean, at this point, they're going to have 3 brand new models of the iPhone 12. Why are they still only making one model of the Apple TV? In this day and age, when you're having all these models to fit specific needs of users for iPhones or other phones, such as different screen sizes, it just doesn't make sense to have just one model of Apple TV.
Each generation now has 2 models. They're the exact same fit form, just has different memory. It's the same thing, has different memory. So the current 5th generation has 32 gigabytes of memory and 64 gigabytes of memory. There's also a 4th generation that's available per purchase right now. The 6th generation is projected to have 2 memories, one at 64 gigabytes and one at 128 gigabytes, if I remember correctly. So there are 2 models. They're just both high-end models with different memory.
Yeah, I'm talking about more something tailored to a different type of customer besides just how much memory you're getting.
It's probably because they know that things work really well when you're in the Apple ecosystem. They work well with the Apple TV, so they'll just do what they want and charge and just basically have a higher tier, a higher standard for the Apple TVs.
Once again, I have to caveat, I am not an Apple TV household. I am a Roku household. I just have one Apple TV in the mix just to maintain a toe in the infrastructure. My daughter also has an Apple TV that she takes to school with her. Those are the only 2 Apple TVs I have. Everything else is Roku.
I'll be honest, if they sold one that was around $50, I could realistically see myself getting one. At $150, no, screw it. I'm just going to go with an Amazon Fire TV for, $35, $40.
Ask yourself this: if you can get an Apple Fire Stick 4K Fire Stick TV on sale for $25, which I've seen, versus a $50 Apple Stick that never goes on sale, which one are you going to buy?
I kind of want to get more into the Apple TV ecosystem, though.
Exactly, which is why I have one available. But if I did not have a TV available for it, I would just stick with Roku's.
Yeah.
In my hands right now, I have an Apple TV Gen 2 that I was given from my dad, I think it was. And the intention was to hook it up in my kids' rooms. And then he also upgraded what he was using his Roku 3 for at the time. And he's like, I could give you this as well if you want. Or instead, I think it was instead. And I was like, sure, because that was the clearly better option than the Apple TV Gen 2. And it's been fantastic and it's still going strong. The Apple TV 2, I understand, doesn't have the YouTube app. It's only 720. It's missing. It's really slow. Whole bunch of other problems with it. And the Roku 3 it's still going pretty well. It gets a little toasty. You have to manually reset it occasionally, but it still goes really strong. So it's holding up a lot better. And then I was, going to give it back. And then I just held on to it because I'm a terrible son. And also he has no intention of using a damn Apple TV too.
I don't know why anybody would. It's going to be obsolete in another month or so.
Yeah. I personally will probably buy something in the Apple ecosystem when it comes out, because I want to be able to make sure if for some reason the Apple TV makes sense to have with the iDevices, that it can be supported for things like this, where the apps are fully available. Because I've only got a Gen 3 and we don't have HBO now in Canada, but what apps in Canada are going to no longer be supported? Time will tell.
Right. And I think in the future, we'll have a nice alternative segment to what we've been talking about, because there is another option out there. And I will just leave that as a tease, because our absent co-host might have a segment on something else entirely.
Which is not a new device, but it's apparently new to our circle, so we'll leave it at that. By the way, we stream this live at Geeks.live. At Geeks.live on Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern. I just pasted in the chat there. There's a little link showing all the different versions of Apple TVs over the years. It's funny to see how visually they've pretty much remained the same for since the second generation. I'm surprised we haven't seen a big change in visual other than the remote.
Well, you're just seeing the top-down view. You're not seeing the side view. They're taller now.
Yeah, I know they're taller, but they're a black Apple box. Like, they haven't changed the form factor other than taller.
Not much. And also there's that remote that's apparently very much panned for the fourth and the fifth generations. And I just don't see Apple improving on that for the sixth generation. I hope they do. It would be a big win for Apple if they do, just because it has been so banned, but it's Apple. They're going to do whatever they want to do. And if it's just to leave the remote the way it is, then that's it. From what I understand, you can use the older second and third generation remote on the fourth and the fifth generation. So maybe that's what I'll do with the sixth generation. We'll see.
Well, moving on to our last news point here, Suncast, you were going to talk about peanut butter, right? Because you're talking about Facebook buying Jiffy, like the peanut butter. Oh, sorry, it's GIF. It's Giphy. GIF with a GIF. You don't GIF someone a gift. You give them a gift.
I'm just going to pretend you didn't say any of that.
Smart.
So everybody's probably familiar with Giphy, which is a GIF making and sharing website. Facebook has announced that they are buying this service for, get this, $400 million, with plans to integrate the massive GIF library into Instagram and other Facebook apps. Now, they already have this integrated with Instagram, and so this is very interesting that they're buying this. Under its new ownership, Giphy will live on as part of the Instagram team, with the goal of making it even easier to send GIFs and stickers in Instagram stories and direct messages. For now, though, Facebook says that things will remain the same for Giphy users. But will it? This is Facebook after all, and they have had numerous privacy issues. And currently, Giphy doesn't use any tracking pixels or cookies. And of course, we all know that Facebook likes their data. They like to track you. They like to have all kinds of data on you, because what is their business? It's you. They want to track you and your data and sell it. So what's going to change here in the future? And what might happen to those apps like Twitter, Slack, Reddit, and iMessage that currently use Giphy's API? There's so many apps, like I just mentioned, that use Giphy's API to access these GIFs and put them into their messaging app. And so I'm thinking iMessage and some of these other services just, I don't know that they want to continue having a relationship where they're dependent on Facebook.
Yeah, so I'm curious what the purpose of this really was, because it's an odd acquisition, I think.
A little bit.
The other thing that I think is interesting to think about is the legal ramifications of this, because gifts are all stolen property. That's what they are. Gifts are someone else's property.
Not all of them. Not all of them, because
Okay,
if you do
fair.
look at Giphy, and I found this out the other day when I was looking at stuff on there with Andrew Zarian, WWE actually does officially put gifts on Giphy.
Okay, sorry. I'll be even nicer. Many of the gifts on there are stolen property, essentially, right? And people often have allowed it because gifts are just a thing of our society, and they're also like, yeah, whatever, Giphy. At least people will be sharing that. Who cares? You're not the big bad corporation. But then now it's Facebook. So are there going to be companies be like, I don't want Facebook using my property? Big bad Facebook?
They're going to have content algorithms now checking each GIF that you upload and create.
I just think from the people who own the rights, if the company is anti-Facebook, they might be inclined to be like, I don't want that up there.
$400 million is a lot of cash for a defensive acquisition, meaning they just want to take the company because of the intellectual property and they just don't want anybody else to use it, or they don't want the company to use it against them. But it's possible.
I didn't think of that. I didn't think of
Facebook.
that.
They've got money to burn.
That could very well be.
But with these kind of acquisitions, I always question them saying, oh, nothing's going to change. It's going to be business as usual. Nothing's going to happen. You'll still be able to use our service however you want to do it, just the way that it's always been. With Facebook and Google and all these other giant companies that gobble up other companies, has that normally been the case where it's been business as usual?
Okay, that's a good point. What have we seen bought that was widely used that had an API and then was brought in? Actually, you know what? One to think from the way back to the beginning here. Smart Home Nest had the cross compatibility with their API across different hubs and different devices and things like that. And then I believe it was last year or the year before, when after Google had bought them, they decided that they were going to end that integration. There's probably a more
recent one.
Sure.
Dark Sky, purchased by Apple, and Dark Sky has now shut down or will be shutting down their API.
That's another good one. Yeah, I guess we'll see. Perhaps in the future, we'll have to depend purely on Suncast gifts.
Hey, I'll make them.
There is the possibility that there's some IP that they want, and it's considered $400 million worth for them because it'll keep people on the Facebook and Instagram platforms. There's possibility. I just don't have any clue what it is. And it's amazing that a company like Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, whatever, will pay $400 million for like one patent or one piece of intellectual property. But it just depends on the negotiating tactics that are being used, the marketing strategy of the startup in most cases that is being bought out, because they can say, oh, we're not just a startup, we're actually going to full force into this. And we've actually got a lot of people that are using our service. And so it's just a defensive buyout of just not having a future competitor.
I wonder how much of this has to do with just grabbing the market share and the users that use those services. Because after all, it is Facebook and much like Google, you are the product, and the more users that they can get, the more data they can gather.
That's another good point. I wouldn't be surprised though if we did see some services that had Giphy integration start using other services. What's the other big GIF place?
Tenor?
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. But here's the most important question to do with this story. Are the Gonna Geek GIFs on Giphy? Is that where you house them?
Yes.
What a letdown. Facebook Suncast there. He's always a big Facebook fan. Suncast is like, Facebook's the greatest thing ever. He knew about this.
What if all of this is just so that they can gather all these gifts and start doing deep fakes?
Oh, man. Don't get me started.
Aren't you doing a deep fake of Chris right now, Suncast?
Oh, no, this is all me. I mean, come on, there's hair.
All right. Well, we got a couple more minutes. So before we go, I know I said that was the last news story, but before we go, I know your skin's itching right now, SP. You're like, I got something else I want to say about space. I'm so excited because I got to talk about more space right now because we're not going to have a show next week. So why don't you close this up with one more space story?
Sure, I will, but this isn't really a space story. This is, Stephen, watch out. The space objects are coming for you. That's what this is. This isn't another story.
Uh-oh.
This is Stephen's being targeted by the Chinese. What are we talking about here? This is a spacenews.com article that was posted on May 16th by Jeff Faust titled Bridenstine, which is the NASA administrator. Bridenstine criticizes China for uncontrolled rocket reentry. All right, here's the facts. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine criticized China on May 15, 2020 for the, quote, really dangerous, unquote, reentry of a large rocket stage earlier in the week that led to debris landing in Africa. In brief comments opening the online meeting of the NASA Advisory Council's Regulatory and Policy Committee, that's a mouthful, Bridenstine used the May 11th re-entry of the Long March 5B core stage as an example of the behavior that was contrary to the norms of behavior for space activities NASA sought to endorse through its Artemis Accords. The inaugural Long March 5B launch, May 5th, successfully placed into low Earth orbit a prototype next-generation crew capsule, which landed 3 days later, as well as an experimental cargo spacecraft that made an unsuccessful re-entry a day after launch. However, the rocket's core stage, which is 31.7 meters long and 5 meters in diameter, was left in a low, uncontrolled orbit. The core stage re-entered at 11:33 a.m. Eastern Time on May 11th off the coast of West Africa, according to the U.S. Space Force's 18th Space Control Squadron. However, local reports suggest debris from that 20-ton stage appears to have survived re-entry and landed in the African nation of Cote d'Ivoire, along with the vehicle's trajectory, but more than 2,000 kilometers downrange from the re-entry point. That debris included a pipe or conduit about 12 meters long. A slightly earlier re-entry could have posed a risk to the United States. The core stage trajectory took it over the U.S. from Los Angeles to New York before going over the Atlantic. A re-entry just a half an hour earlier could have resulted in debris landing on U.S. soil. Chinese officials have not commented on the Long March 5B core stage re-entry, including whether debris was found is from the rocket. It's also not clear if the core stage was intentionally placed into a low orbit that led to the uncontrolled re-entry of a vehicle and it malfunctioned in some way. So, Stephen, what Jeff Faust is saying is that this was probably intentionally placed and it was meant to hit you in Canada, but it malfunctioned. So it went down in West Africa instead.
Well, all I know is that if I was to be hit by space debris, we would probably have some indication. Like there would probably be, I'm probably be dead. That'd probably be a big indication. Secondly, there'd probably be some form of flames or fire or something like that. There would probably be some form of indicate. Oh God!
Wait, where's the voiceover?
I'm on fire right now. I'm on fire.
This is Stephen Watch 2020.
Pushing.
He keeps on getting targeted by the Chinese. It doesn't matter if it's a space station, a telescope, a rocket body. It's coming for you, big guy.
Oh, man. Well, SP, I look forward to the day of my demise so that you'll know that I was hit by the debris and you can talk about it here on the Gonna Geek Show.
I will definitely cover it. However, Chris will probably be smiling and laughing all the time because he is really wanting that object to hit you. He is the one that is really gunning for this.
Fair enough.
Thank God he doesn't work for NASA.
Well, Suncast, thank you very much for coming on here today. I greatly appreciate it. I know we actually asked you last minute, just so everybody knows, Suncast was awesome. He said, yeah, I'll come on here, even though it was a last minute invite. So thank you very much, Suncast. It was great that you could join us.
I'm just surprised I got your invitation all the way from the future.
That's true. You know what it was? It was like in Back to the Future 3, where we've traveled back in time. And so we've set the wheels in motion. That's how it happened.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't, but it wasn't by Western Union.
So we need
somehow
ZZ
I
Top
still
around
came
here
by
too.
Google Hangouts.
Which, by the way, Google Hangouts is from the past.
Yeah, because we're on Google Meet now.
For those who aren't familiar with Suncast, you could check them out at the GFQ network. Suncast, go ahead and plug that and promote that, or whatever you'd like to plug and promote.
Yeah, you can check us out over at gfqnetwork.com. We got a few shows on there. One of them is What the Tech with Andrew and Paul Thurrott, and they just talk about all sorts of tech stuff and ramble on about all kinds of tech stuff. And it's usually whatever is relevant for that week, or maybe they just want to ramble on about the tech from the past week because there's just so little news right now. But if you like wrestling, there's a ton of wrestling news right now. They do a show called Mat Men, which is really awesome. So you should definitely check that out if you're into wrestling.
Mr. Pioneer, is there anything that you would like to plug or promote?
I would. So I do another podcast called Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the prime show that we cover for that. It is coming back for its 7th and final season on May 27th, which incidentally is also the date that SpaceX is supposed to launch. So it's a big day for me. I might actually take the day off and stay at home, and I might be at home anyway. Anyway, so May 27th is going to be the premiere episode of the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on May 28th, right here at Geeks.live at 9 p.m. Eastern. The gang from Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. will cover that episode. So if you are interested in Marvel, the MCU, or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're your clearinghouse. We're covering season 2 of Iron Fist right now. That's going to be done. And then we're going to move on the 28th to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again. I'm really looking forward to that. Matter of fact, I was in the garage doing some project, cutting some wood and stuff like that. I had the TV out there on my Roku stick, and I was watching the very first episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this weekend. And that's the pilot episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is still fun to watch to this day.
You said that you're the clearinghouse. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said, but okay.
You said you were the clearinghouse. You said we're your clearinghouse. Pretty sure that's what you said.
I don't remember what I said.
Sorry?
Publishers Clearinghouse?
Well, see, because
bring me $1 million.
I thought he said they were the clearinghouse. Maybe I misheard that because I was going to say when you covered the Punisher, you were the Punisher clearinghouse. That's what I was going to say, but then apparently I heard you wrong. So let's just pretend that you said that. I'm not sure. Okay. Because it was a good
English to Canadian translation.
It was a good joke, and I'd like to acknowledge my good joke that didn't exist. Thank you.
I've been drinking too much during this podcast because I miss Chris so much.
Also,
I see how it is.
Yeah, that's an insult.
Nothing, huh? You're your deputy director.
Where's my photo on the wall?
It is
took
true.
it down because I had to do some Zoom meetings.
Okay, and before we go, if you didn't miss that a few seconds ago, we are not having an episode next week. There will not be an episode next week. It's the holiday in America, and they'll have a day off, and there's other things. So we're just going to go ahead and say no show next week. So on Monday, the 25th of May, there will not be an episode recorded, which means somewhere around May 28th, there will not be an episode released either. So why don't you just check out some of the other awesome live geeky content that's around. If you want to check out Better Podcasting Live, it's on Tuesdays usually. Also, if you want to check out Suncast Watches encrypted television shows from the 1990s. You got to get a personal subscription on that, but he'll talk to you on Twitter about that all day long.
I'll tell you all about the Spice Channel.
So on that note, for episode 332 of the official GonnaGeek.com show, I'm Stephen Chandru saying, apparently I ruined a very old George Carlin joke tonight. My apologies.
And I'm SP saying, Chris, you allowed Steven to creep up on your lead on Gonna Geek. I'm disappointed.
I'm Sunkaz from the year 2016. Hello from the past.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or a thumbs up on YouTube. You can always join us for our live recording sessions, which stream Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. And remember, you can find our full back catalog at GonnaGeek.com/show. If you're itching for more geeky content, check out other shows on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. Voice work was by Emily Prokop of The Story Behind podcast. That's it for this episode. We hope to see you back again next week.